When Dad died and left Jake and me the family farm, most people expected us to sell it and move on with our lives. The 200 acres of corn and soybean fields in central Illinois were struggling, barely generating enough income to cover the mortgage payments and property taxes. Jake was fresh out of business school with big city dreams, and I was working as an agricultural consultant, helping other farmers solve the same problems our own operation faced. But something about that land spoke to me in ways that spreadsheets and corporate offices never could. I could see the potential hidden beneath years of poor management and declining soil health. The location was perfect, close enough to major transportation routes to keep shipping costs low, but far enough from urban development to allow for expansion. The soil, despite its current condition, had the bone structure of something that could be truly productive with the right care and investment. I convinced Jake to give me 5 years to turn things around. He would handle the business side, financing, marketing, regulatory compliance, and expansion planning, while I focused on the production side, implementing the soil restoration and precision agriculture techniques I'd been recommending to other farmers. It seemed like a perfect partnership, his business acumen combined with my agricultural expertise. The first year was brutal. We invested every dollar we could borrow into soil testing, precision equipment, and infrastructure improvements. I worked 18-hour days, learning every inch of our land, understanding its capabilities and limitations. Jake traveled constantly, building relationships with grain buyers, equipment dealers, and agricultural lenders who would be crucial to our expansion plans. By the end of that first year, our yields had improved 30% over the previous owner's results, and we had a business plan that outlined how we could systematically acquire adjacent properties and build a truly significant agricultural operation. Block 2, the growth years. The next 5 years transformed our modest family farm into one of the most successful agricultural operations in the region. We grew from 200 acres to 800 acres through strategic acquisitions of neighboring properties, each purchase carefully planned to optimize our logistics and maximize operational efficiency. Jake proved to be a brilliant dealmaker, somehow always finding financing for our expansion plans and negotiating purchase prices that other buyers couldn't match. My focus remained on the production side, and the results spoke for themselves. Our corn yields consistently exceeded county averages by 20–25%, while our input costs remained below industry standards thanks to precision agriculture techniques and soil health improvements that reduced our dependence on expensive fertilizers and pesticides. Word of our success spread through agricultural circles, and I found myself invited to speak at farming conferences and university extension events. Jake handled all the business relationships with characteristic charm and competence. He cultivated connections with commodity traders, equipment manufacturers, and agricultural technology companies that gave us access to the latest innovations before our competitors. His networking skills opened doors that would have remained closed to a simple farmer like me, and his financial management ensured that our rapid growth remained sustainable. The partnership worked beautifully because our skills complemented each other perfectly. I understood the science and art of modern farming, while Jake understood the business dynamics that could turn agricultural production into serious wealth. We trusted each other completely, sharing information freely and making major decisions together. By year 5, we were farming 800 acres, generating annual revenues of over $3 million, and being courted by agricultural investment funds that were interested in partnering with successful operations like ours. Our success had exceeded our wildest initial projections, and it seemed like the sky was the limit for what we could accomplish together. Block 3. The expansion continues. Years 6 through 10 saw our operation evolve from a successful family farm into a true agricultural enterprise. We crossed the 1,000-acre threshold, then the 1,500-acre mark, becoming one of the largest independent farming operations in our region. Jake's business development skills were crucial during this phase, as he navigated the complex financing arrangements needed to support our continued expansion while maintaining the cash flow necessary for day-to-day operations. The scale of our operation allowed us to invest in technologies that smaller farms couldn't justify. We implemented GPS-guided precision planting systems, variable rate fertilizer application equipment, and drone-based crop monitoring programs that optimized every aspect of our production. Our grain storage and handling facilities rivaled those of much larger corporations, and we had developed direct marketing relationships that consistently delivered premium prices for our crops. Jake established a separate company to handle our custom farming operations, providing planting, spraying, and harvesting services to smaller farmers in the region. This diversification strategy generated additional revenue streams while spreading our fixed equipment costs across more acres. He also developed relationships with agricultural research companies that paid us to test new seed varieties and farming techniques on our land. My reputation in agricultural circles continued to grow as our yields consistently outperformed regional averages. I was appointed to agricultural advisory committees, served as a consultant to equipment manufacturers, and even testified before congressional subcommittees about sustainable farming practices. The expertise I had developed was becoming valuable beyond our own operation. But perhaps more importantly, Jake and I had developed a working relationship that seemed unshakable. We had weathered financial stress, equipment failures, weather disasters, and market volatility together. We had built something remarkable, and I trusted him completely with both the business decisions and the financial management that kept our operation running smoothly. Block 4, reaching the summit. By year 12, our operation had reached a scale that seemed almost surreal compared to our humble beginnings. We were farming 2,000 acres across 3 counties, employing 12 full-time workers, and generating annual revenues that approached $8 million. Our success story had become legendary in agricultural circles, and we were frequently featured in farming magazines and business publications as an example of what was possible with innovation, hard work, and smart management. The financial success was gratifying, but what truly made me proud was the reputation we had built for operational excellence and environmental stewardship. Our soil health had improved dramatically over the years, our water management practices had become a model for other farmers, and our integration of technology with traditional farming wisdom had created yields that consistently amazed agricultural experts. Jake had expanded his role beyond our own operation, developing consulting relationships with agricultural investment funds and helping other farmers structure expansion plans. His expertise in agricultural finance had made him a sought-after speaker at industry conferences, and he was frequently quoted in agricultural business publications. The combination of his business acumen and my production expertise had created a formidable team. Our success had also brought us to the attention of larger agricultural corporations that were interested in acquiring successful operations like ours. Jake handled these inquiries with his characteristic diplomacy, always expressing gratitude for their interest while making it clear that we were committed to maintaining our independence. We had built something special, and neither of us was interested in selling out to corporate agriculture. The farm that Dad had left us was now worth an estimated $15 million, and the business we had built around it was generating enough cash flow to support comfortable lifestyles for both our families, while funding continued expansion. We had achieved the American dream of building something valuable from modest beginnings, and I assumed we would continue growing together for decades to come. Block 5, the first warning signs. The first indication that something was wrong came during our regular quarterly business review meeting in early spring. Jake seemed distracted and evasive when discussing our financial position, deflecting my questions about cash flow with vague references to seasonal adjustments and timing differences. This was unusual because he had always been transparent about our financial situation, sharing detailed reports and answering any questions I had about our business performance. When I pressed for more specific information about our operating capital and credit availability, Jake became defensive in a way I had never seen before. He insisted that everything was fine and that he was handling all the financial management competently, but his reluctance to provide concrete numbers set off alarm bells. We had always made financial decisions together, and his sudden secretiveness felt like a fundamental change in our partnership. I noticed other subtle changes in Jake's behavior over the following weeks. He was spending more time away from the farm, claiming to be meeting with equipment dealers and grain buyers, But his explanations of these meetings were vague and inconsistent. Phone calls that he used to take openly were now conducted behind closed doors, and he seemed increasingly concerned about maintaining privacy around his business communications. The most troubling change was in our decision-making process. Jake began making unilateral choices about equipment purchases, marketing contracts, and operational procedures, without the consultation that had always characterized our partnership. When I questioned these decisions, he would become irritated and remind me that business management was his area of responsibility. Despite these warning signs, I chose to give Jake the benefit of the doubt. We had been through stressful periods before, and the scale of our operation required increasingly complex financial management. I assumed that the pressure of managing such a large business was affecting his communication style, and that things would return to normal once the planting season was complete and our cash flow stabilized. Block 6. The corporate interest. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in late April. Jake had left early for what he described as a routine meeting with our banker, and I was in the equipment shed performing maintenance on our planting equipment when my cell phone rang. The caller identified himself as Robert Chen, a vice president with Midwest Agricultural Holdings, one of the largest agricultural corporations in the region. Chen's message was straightforward and shocking. His company was interested in acquiring our operation and had been engaged in preliminary discussions with Jake about a potential transaction. He wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss the details of their offer and to answer any questions I might have about the acquisition process. He spoke as if the sale was a foregone conclusion and that my role was simply to approve terms that had already been negotiated. I was stunned into silence. Jake and I had never discussed selling the farm, and he had consistently told me that he shared my commitment to maintaining our independence. The idea that he had been negotiating with potential buyers without my knowledge felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. I told Chen that I needed to speak with my brother before any further discussions could take place. When Jake returned from his meeting that afternoon, I confronted him directly about Chen's call. His reaction confirmed my worst fears. He didn't deny the conversations with Midwest Agricultural Holdings, but instead tried to frame them as exploratory discussions that were designed to understand our options without making any commitments. He insisted that he had been planning to discuss the opportunity with me once he had more concrete information about their offer. But his explanation felt rehearsed and defensive. When I pressed for details about how long these discussions had been ongoing and what commitments he might have made, Jake became evasive and claimed that everything was still preliminary. The trust that had been the foundation of our partnership was beginning to crack, and I could see that our relationship was entering uncharted and dangerous territory. Block 7. The ugly truth emerges. My investigation into Jake's activities revealed a web of deception that had been months in the making. By carefully reviewing our financial records and business communications, I discovered that Jake had been in discussions with Midwest Agricultural Holdings for over 6 months, providing them with detailed information about our operations, financial performance, and growth potential. The preliminary negotiations had progressed much further than he had admitted. The most devastating discovery was that Jake had signed a letter of intent giving Midwest Agricultural Holdings exclusive rights to negotiate for the purchase of our operation. This document, which I found in his office files, committed us to a 90-day negotiation period during which we could not entertain offers from other potential buyers. Jake had effectively put our farm on the market without my knowledge or consent. The financial analysis that Jake had provided to the corporate buyers was thorough and damaging. He had shared proprietary information about our production techniques, customer relationships, and expansion plans that would allow competitors to replicate our success. More troubling, he had presented financial projections that painted a picture of an operation that was more valuable as a corporate acquisition than as an independent family farm. When I confronted Jake with this evidence, he finally revealed the full extent of his betrayal. Midwest Agricultural Holdings had offered him a personal consulting contract worth $500,000 per year for 5 years, plus equity participation in their regional expansion plans. In exchange, Jake would help them acquire and integrate successful operations like ours, using his knowledge of agricultural finance and business development to identify and pursue other acquisition targets. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Jake had been positioning himself for a career with corporate agriculture while systematically undermining the independent operation we had built together. The brother I had trusted with my life's work had been planning his exit strategy while I was focused on our continued growth and success. Block 8. The battle lines are drawn. The confrontation that followed Jake's revelation was the most painful conversation of my life. He tried to justify his actions by arguing that selling to Midwest Agricultural Holdings was the logical next step in our business evolution, claiming that we had reached the limits of what we could accomplish as an independent operation. He painted a picture of unlimited growth potential and reduced financial risk that would benefit both of us. But his arguments couldn't disguise the fundamental betrayal of trust that his secret negotiations represented. He had violated the basic principles of our partnership by making unilateral decisions about the future of our shared enterprise. More personally, he had lied to me repeatedly about his activities and intentions, destroying the foundation of honesty that had made our relationship work. Jake's defense became increasingly desperate as he realized that I wasn't going to simply accept his fait accompli. He accused me of being unrealistic about the challenges facing independent farmers, claiming that consolidation with larger corporations was inevitable and that our choice was between selling on favorable terms or being forced out by competitive pressures. He suggested that my emotional attachment to the farm was preventing me from making rational business decisions. The legal reality of our situation was complex and troubling. While Jake couldn't complete the sale without my agreement, his exclusive negotiation agreement with Midwest Agricultural Holdings had created significant legal and financial complications. Our business partnership agreements hadn't anticipated this level of conflict, and the resolution would require either compromise or expensive litigation. I hired my own attorney and began exploring options for protecting my interests in the operation we had built together. The legal consultation revealed that Jake's actions, while potentially unethical, might not be illegal given the structure of our business partnership. The fight for control of our farm would be waged in boardrooms and courtrooms rather than in the fields where we had built our success. Block 9. The corporate pressure. Midwest Agricultural Holdings responded to my resistance with a sophisticated pressure campaign designed to force the sale of our operation. Robert Chen contacted me directly, explaining that their offer was time-sensitive and that market conditions might not support such favorable terms if negotiations were delayed. He made it clear that they had other acquisition targets and wouldn't wait indefinitely for our decision. The corporate strategy became more aggressive when Chen began contacting our key business partners and customers, informing them about the potential change in ownership and suggesting that their relationships might be more secure with a larger, more stable organization. Several of our largest grain buyers expressed concern about our ability to fulfill long-term contracts if our ownership structure remained uncertain. Jake supported the corporate pressure campaign, arguing that my reluctance to negotiate was damaging relationships and threatening the value of our operation. He claimed that Midwest Agricultural Holdings was losing patience with the delays and might withdraw their offer entirely, leaving us with a devalued business and uncertain future prospects. The psychological pressure was intense. I found myself isolated in fighting for the independence of an operation that Jake was actively trying to sell. Our employees were confused about the conflicting messages they were receiving. Our customers were questioning our stability, and our suppliers were concerned about future payment terms. The uncertainty was creating exactly the kind of operational disruption that could justify a corporate takeover. But I also began to understand the broader implications of what was happening. Our farm had become a target because of its success, and Jake's betrayal was part of a systematic effort by corporate agriculture to acquire and consolidate successful independent operations. The battle for our farm was part of a larger war for the future of American agriculture. I realized that surrendering to the corporate pressure wouldn't just mean losing the farm Jake and I had built together. It would mean betraying the principles and values that had made our success possible in the first place. Block 10. fighting back. My counterattack began with a thorough legal review of Jake's actions and the agreements he had signed on behalf of our partnership. My attorney discovered several procedural violations and unauthorized commitments that could void the exclusive negotiation agreement with Midwest Agricultural Holdings. Jake's eagerness to complete the deal had led him to exceed his authority and make promises that weren't legally binding. I also began building support within our local agricultural community, reaching out to other independent farmers who had faced similar corporate pressure. The response was overwhelming. Many farmers had experienced acquisition attempts and understood the threat that corporate consolidation posed to independent agriculture. They rallied to support our fight, providing both moral support and practical assistance. The media attention generated by our conflict created unexpected leverage in the negotiations. Agricultural journalists were interested in the story of corporate acquisition tactics and family business betrayal, and their coverage painted Midwest Agricultural Holdings in an unfavorable light. The company found itself defending its business practices in trade publications and industry forums. My public relations strategy focused on the broader implications of corporate consolidation in agriculture, arguing that the acquisition of successful independent operations like ours threatened the diversity and innovation that made American agriculture competitive. I testified before state agricultural committees and spoke at farmer organization meetings about the importance of maintaining independent family farms. The financial pressure on Jake began to mount as well. His personal consulting contract with Midwest Agricultural Holdings was contingent on completing our acquisition, and the delays were jeopardizing his future income prospects. The corporate partners who had recruited him were beginning to question his ability to deliver on his promises. I offered Jake a choice. He could abandon his corporate consulting opportunity and commit to rebuilding our partnership, or I would buy out his interest in our operation and continue independently. The buyout offer was fair but firm. He would receive full compensation for his ownership stake, but he would have no future involvement in the business we had built together. Block 11. The fracture deepens. Jake's response to my ultimatum revealed the depth of his commitment to the corporate deal and his willingness to sacrifice our relationship for personal gain. Instead of accepting my buyout offer or abandoning his consulting arrangement, he chose to escalate the conflict by filing a lawsuit seeking to force the sale of our operation to Midwest Agricultural Holdings. His legal strategy was based on arguments that I was acting irrationally and preventing him from realizing the fair value of his investment in our partnership. Jake claimed that my refusal to negotiate with corporate buyers was a breach of my fiduciary duty to maximize the value of our shared assets. He portrayed himself as the rational business partner trying to protect both our interests against my emotional and unrealistic attachment to independent farming. The lawsuit created a toxic dynamic that poisoned every aspect of our business relationship. Legal discovery procedures required us to share confidential information about our operations, financial performance, and strategic plans. The litigation costs were mounting rapidly, draining resources that should have been invested in our farming operations. Our employees found themselves caught in the middle of a family conflict that threatened their job security. Several key personnel began looking for alternative employment, concerned that the uncertainty would eventually lead to operational disruption regardless of how the legal battle was resolved. The institutional knowledge and operational continuity that had been crucial to our success was beginning to erode. The corporate buyers were content to wait while Jake and I destroyed each other in court. They understood that prolonged litigation would weaken our negotiating position and potentially reduce the price they would need to pay for our operation. The legal battle was serving their interests, even if it was devastating our business and our family relationship. I realized that Jake had crossed a line from which there might be no return. The brother who had been my closest partner and trusted friend had become an adversary, willing to use legal warfare to force me into a business arrangement that violated everything I believed about farming and family loyalty. Block 12. The painful resolution. The legal battle that consumed the next 8 months was devastating to both our business and our family relationships. The litigation costs exceeded $200,000, depleting cash reserves that should have been available for operational expenses and capital improvements. More importantly, the uncertainty created by the prolonged conflict damaged our relationships with customers, suppliers, and employees who needed stability to maintain their confidence in our operation. My victory in court was Pyrrhic but decisive. The judge ruled that Jake had exceeded his authority in negotiating with Midwest Agricultural Holdings and that his exclusive dealing agreement was void due to procedural violations and lack of proper authorization. The court also found that Jake's personal consulting arrangement created a conflict of interest that violated his fiduciary duties to our partnership. However, the legal victory couldn't repair the relationship that had been destroyed by Jake's betrayal and our subsequent conflict. The trust that had been the foundation of our partnership was gone, replaced by suspicion and resentment that would make future collaboration impossible. We could no longer work together effectively, regardless of what the legal documents said about our business relationship. The buyout negotiation that followed was contentious and painful. Jake demanded compensation based on the inflated valuations that Midwest Agricultural Holdings had used in their acquisition discussions, while I insisted on more conservative appraisals that reflected the actual market value of our assets. The final settlement required me to pay Jake $3.2 million for his share of our operation, a sum that required significant borrowing and would constrain my financial flexibility for years to come. Jake's departure from the farm was bitter and acrimonious. He took with him not only his financial stake, but also valuable business relationships and institutional knowledge that had been crucial to our success. The consulting relationships he had developed, the customer connections he had cultivated, and the financial expertise he had provided would all be lost to our operation. Watching Jake drive away from the farm for the last time was one of the most painful moments of my life, marking the end of a partnership that had created something remarkable, but had ultimately been destroyed by greed and betrayal. Block 13. Rebuilding and moving forward. The first year after Jake's departure was the most challenging period in my farming career. I had to rebuild business relationships that he had managed, develop new sources of financing to replace his expertise, and restore operational confidence among employees and customers who had been shaken by our very public conflict. The debt load from buying out Jake's interest created cash flow constraints that limited my flexibility and required careful financial management. But the independence I had fought to preserve proved to be worth the sacrifice. Without the pressure to maximize short-term returns for corporate shareholders, I could focus on long-term sustainability and operational excellence. I implemented new environmental stewardship programs, expanded our direct marketing relationships, and invested in technologies that would improve both productivity and sustainability. The agricultural community's support during my conflict with Jake had created new relationships and opportunities that partially offset the business connections I had lost. Other independent farmers began seeking my advice on corporate acquisition defense, and I developed consulting relationships that provided additional income streams while spreading knowledge about resisting corporate consolidation. My reputation within agricultural circles was enhanced by my successful resistance to corporate takeover. I was invited to speak at conferences about maintaining family farm independence, and my story became a case study in agricultural business schools about the challenges facing independent operators in an increasingly consolidated industry. The farm that Jake and I had built together continued to thrive under independent ownership, proving that family operations could compete effectively with corporate agriculture when they maintained their focus on innovation, efficiency, and customer service. Our yields remained above regional averages, our financial performance was strong, and our operational reputation was excellent. But the personal cost of the conflict was something I would carry forever. The brother I had trusted with my life's work had chosen corporate advancement over family loyalty, destroying a relationship that had been central to both our personal lives and our business success. The farm was thriving, but the family that had built it together was broken beyond repair. I had saved our operation from corporate acquisition, but I had lost my brother in the process. Sometimes the price of victory is higher than anyone should have to pay.